Hey everyone, this is Ryder from Skip. I hope you're doing well. It's Thursday, September 17th. I wanted to do a quick video to take a look back at the last 6 months. You know, next week is going to be exactly 6 months since the CARES Act was signed into law. So much has happened in this past 6 months. It's often confusing to be reacting to the news that we're seeing every day, getting your hopes up about a tweet or a CNN quote or whatever. If you're just following the daily updates, you're often missing the big picture. So I wanted to take a few minutes to take a step back to see what's happened in the past 6 months. I hope it will provide a good framework for you to quickly understand what you've been watching for the past 6 months, understanding how it's unfolded, and using this framework to understand what's possible this week, next week, and prior to the election, if anything. So, let's dive in starting in March 2020, but first, please hit subscribe. As you know, 100% of our YouTube revenue this month is being distributed to folks like you, subscribers of this channel, for stimulus checks. If you're watching this in 2025, I'm sorry you missed the giveaway. It went great, but I hope you have a vaccine, and I hope you're thriving, and the economy is thriving, and everyone's doing well. But it's September 2020. Please hit subscribe. And if you're watching this later on in 2020 or 2021, check the link in the description because I'm going to update this video as necessary with a new chapter. So, March 2020. Check this out. The market crashes on March 23rd. On March 25th, 2 days later, the CARES Act passes in the House. On the 27th, the President signs the CARES Act into law, the $2 trillion CARES Act. I mean, that is an incredible reminder to realize this is what happened, this tanking of the economy. Lawmakers were so panicked at the bottom here that they signed the bill, and of course this recovery was due to the signing, the optimistic outlook after signing, but this dip created so much fear that lawmakers acted within a couple days to pass the largest stimulus act ever signed into law in the U.S. But as we know, the CARES Act was generally great. It provided economic assistance for individuals, small businesses, and so much more. The three most important highlights for folks are often the $1,200 stimulus checks plus $500 for dependents, the PPP funding, and the 10,000 EIDL grants. Again, that was the end of March. Now, beginning of April, time to get the money. The main questions people had this month was, when will we get our stimulus checks? How to apply for EIDL and PPP? When will we get the EIDL and PPP and how to track that? And will there be more funding? So all of our videos in April were around how to get the money. We also built our first trackers so you could track EIDL progress, track unemployment progress. We talked about the Paycheck Protection Program. We looked at data on who had received their EIDL loans. Again, April 15th, that was the day where most people in the country had received their stimulus checks. There was a big push around that time. However, there were a lot of subplots in April, particularly around the applications and the timing. People wanted the EIDL grants within a few days. That was the intent. The rollout was a disaster. That's not my opinion. That's lawmakers and auditors came to that opinion. The SBA rollout for EIDL grants still is generally terrible. You know, to their credit, the EIDL program had millions and millions of applicants. They did not anticipate that. They closed the program on April 15th. Then they reopened it 2 months later. Going to get to that. And then the PPP closed their first round. Then they reopened. And there were all sorts of IRS direct deposit issues. That was April. All right. Zooming into May, when the HEREOS Act passed the House. And we were all hopeful there would be a second major relief bill. When was it coming? What will be in the new stimulus bill? Most of the conversations were around, all right, what's going to be in the new package? Most people assumed there was going to be a new package. The HEREOS Act, something Democrats put together, was $3 trillion, and it passed in the House on May 15th. In it, there was more stimulus checks, more PPP funding, but in particular, there was funding for governments, state and local governments, funding for testing, funding for hospitals. So a lot of the institutions supporting us, supporting our healthcare, supporting our public workers also had funding in this package. That's what a lot of the Republicans pushed back on, that in particular. But as we know, nothing happened. It was killed in the Senate. Mitch McConnell and Republicans did not want to spend that much money. So the videos in May talked a lot about the new proposals. This one here at the beginning of May talked about the idea of everyone getting $2,000 stimulus checks, which was one proposal. It was gaining traction from some lawmakers. Also, we detailed the new $3 trillion stimulus proposal, the HEREOS Act, which I just mentioned. We also took a look at some of the SBA documents in detail, what the portal looked like, what the loan document looked like, answering questions about that to help people that were waiting to hear from the SBA, and also help them once they got the email from the SBA to know what to do. The subplots were around forgiveness. The questions were, okay, we took the PPP loan. Gosh, how do we spend this money? Can we spend it on this or that? Do we have to spend it within 8 weeks? Are we following the original rules, or are we going to assume that they're going to change the rules, which they ended up doing? They changed the rules lots of times. And are there other grant options? That was a question in May a lot of people had, with the realization that there might not be another stimulus to help them, and the EIDL grant might not come through. So what are the other options? And some did come through, Facebook grants and many others. Overall, those were just a drop in the bucket for the millions of people who actually needed grants. Fast forward to June, much ado about nothing. Okay, we were no closer to any type of stimulus deal. There was talk. Reopenings were starting to happen. That was the good news in some sense. However, as we saw, this is when cases skyrocketed in the Southeast, Georgia, Florida, in that region, because they reopened the quickest and they saw that a lot of people got infected and a lot of deaths in those states as well as across the country. This is when cases started to peak towards the end of June. And the videos we talked about in June, a lot were around SBA reporting. SBA started to share data. It was almost like they were defending their record on how they rolled out EIDL loans, PPP loans. But I also talked about here, towards the beginning of June, why it's unlikely that we would get a second stimulus check. That was a lot of the sentiment at the time. Once the HEREOS Act was killed, there became this realization that, gosh, there isn't really the momentum to get a second stimulus check. And that has really held true for the past 3 months. That's why it's amazing, all these subplots that happen on a daily basis when you're following tweets and news. First of all, it's a terrible habit, even though I'm reporting on the news every day. It doesn't allow you to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and strategy that a lot of these lawmakers take into consideration when they're thinking about how much to spend, when to spend, to support a deal or not support a deal, with a lot of considerations in mind, but mainly what's good for their re-election chances. Obviously, that's a big one. They want to stay in office. They want to focus on that. So the biggest news in June, though, was the EIDL grant portal reopened for everyone. For a period, it was only open to agricultural businesses. Then on June 15th, it reopened. So there was another big spike. People trying to apply, hoping to get the 10K. Of course, that didn't happen. It was still 1K per employee. Fast forward to July, summer months, there was a rush to beat the summer Congress recess and the summer vacation. Okay, the main reason for this was that the unemployment boost was ending at the end of July, and there was this fear of letting it lapse. The biggest question of the month, can Pelosi and McConnell and the White House agree to a new deal? There's so much back and forth. There's probably thousands of videos on these 5 characters and their conversations, or lack of conversations, throughout the month of July. But to summarize, Pelosi and Schumer wanted a $3 trillion deal. McConnell and the Republicans wanted a $1 trillion deal, and they couldn't meet in the middle. Neither was budging. We talked about this a lot in July. We also talked about PPP loan data, EIDL loan data. We published a lot of the data so people could see what was happening. This has always been part of what we've wanted to do, share data so you can get peace of mind around, hey, how much progress is actually being made? And of course, giving some transparency to what's happening with this stuff. But also in July, the SBA announced they were ending the EIDL Advance program. Again, this was about middle of the month when they announced. And there was some hope in July. S4227 bill was introduced on July 20th. To recap, this bill said that the EIDL grants as part of the CARES Act were supposed to be $10,000, period. So every person who applied and who was eligible should have gotten the full $10,000. That was the intent of the bill, and this is what these lawmakers argued the SBA should fulfill their promise to give out $10,000 to everyone. And we wrote thousands of letters to lawmakers. As I mentioned in my video yesterday, there are 2 new supporters of this bill. It still hasn't gotten much traction, but there are now 8 senators sponsoring this bill. But again, that was just more hope, and we dive into August now. There was no deal. The unemployment benefits lapsed. Democrats and Republicans could not bridge the funding difference. The $1 trillion on the Republican side and the $3 trillion on the Democrat side, they could not find a middle ground. And even at this point, Pelosi said she'd come down to $2 trillion, so there was still a $1 trillion gap. That's a lot of money, so I get it, but at this point, millions are panicking because they want to figure out how they're going to pay your rent. So Trump issued executive orders on August 7th. One of these took some funding and put it towards the unemployment boost, a $450 unemployment boost. So that's been good. The others had less of a direct impact, but this unemployment boost did give benefits to some folks. Otherwise, there was just lots of talk. Lots of talk, again, between Pelosi, Schumer, McConnell, Mnuchin, Meadows, and Trump. But no deal was made. And our videos talk about this. Here we see at the beginning of the month, no deal on stimulus, Trump to issue executive orders. Then the next day on Saturday, Trump signed the executive orders. We still, nevertheless, talked about the stimulus timeline. Hey, if something does pass, what can we expect now? But we also spent time talking about alternatives. So there was a $20,000 grant opportunity. We covered that. Facebook had a grant program. We covered that. Basically, any major grant programs we wanted to cover to put up there as well. In between the talking points, like this video here, Mark Meadows said, we'll pass it tomorrow if ... but nothing happened. Similar with Pelosi here, optimism, oh, we're ready to pass it, but for the Republican. All right, here we are getting warmer to round 2. Here we are, middle of September. The election is getting closer. Okay, is this the time or not? Politicians are saying they will spend what it takes. Steve Mnuchin on Monday said, Republicans, don't worry about the cost. Don't worry about the fiscal responsibility. Just pass something. Pelosi the next day said, we're here to pass something. Trump yesterday said, spend what it takes, Republicans. We have the major players now saying to spend what it takes. Is this a repeat of July and August, or will the Republicans cave on the spending and go up to $2 trillion? Or will Democrats block and stall this? Because politically, even though they want to pass something, if it's not exactly what they want, they may want to wait till after the election, of course, with the hope that maybe this is better to get Trump out of there and get McConnell out of there, right? If they're thinking about that, they may want to delay and make it look bad for the Republicans. What do you think? Given the 6-month history, all these ups and downs, I hope this gave some perspective, but what do you think will happen this month of these questions? Do you think the Republicans are going to cave? We're going to reach a deal, or Democrats will block and stall? Please share. This month, we've covered a lot as well. You know, we also covered an EIDL loan alternative up to $250,000, the Carl program. Again, not many people have applied for it. Not many people know about it. It doesn't apply to too many areas, but it's worth looking at. So watch that video. We covered Biden's stimulus plan. We also said a week ago, hey, we're not going to get second stimulus checks, but that was before all these guys came out with positivity this week. So who knows? But the best part of this month so far, in my opinion, American people coming together, people donating time, effort, money to help, and grant programs and philanthropy. Again, even if politicians cannot reach an agreement, we collectively can share knowledge, can share our time, can help others, and make a difference. And I genuinely believe that. That's why we are donating 100% of our revenue this month on YouTube to give out to you watching this video if you're a subscriber, and if you've watched this video here, this one that says we're giving away $1,200 stimulus checks. We're serious about it. We want to make a difference. We want to start the movement that if you have a little extra money to spare, think about what you can do. But we want to inspire people to think the same way we're thinking and do the right thing. So there we are, the complete timeline of the coronavirus stimulus packages. September 2020 is where we are today. Again, if you're watching in 2025, hi, hope you're doing well. I'm sorry you missed out on the giveaway, but I hope you are out doing things in public with friends again and enjoying your life and staying healthy. And for all of you watching today, as always, thank you so much for supporting our channel. Stay well, stay healthy, and I'll see you tomorrow.